Hello, I'm Kate Bridge, and this is my teacher research project. Some of the things that I'll be discussing throughout this presentation are literature reviews, interviews, data analyses, art-based research, and then an overall reflection of my research process. So again, I'm Kate Bridge. I'm a senior at Longwood University, and I'm majoring in elementary education. When I'm not at school, I spend a lot of time with my two dogs, Mocha and Gracie, and I work full time as a nanny for a family with three kids who also live on a farm. The question I decided to explore throughout my research process was how do you virtually teach students to read and write online as well as you could in person? I chose this question because we currently are in a global pandemic trying to teach our children through a computer. I wanted to know how best to teach students virtually and see if it was at all beneficial in case I was ever out in a similar situation in the future. To begin my research, I explored my topic through websites, journals, and I even was able to find a few articles that helped me to further understand the perspectives of teachers who have had to teach online during quarantine. The first article I came across was from the University of Florida. This site provided many online seminars that discussed ways to be successful in teaching reading online. The second article I reviewed was titled Active Learning in Hybrid and Physically Distanced Classrooms. This covered the potential problems with virtual education and how to overcome and prevent those problems from occurring. The next two articles I reviewed were written by the authors Suzanne Linder and Melissa Cruz. Both of these articles discussed strategies for teaching reading and writing to students virtually. Finally, the last two articles I reviewed were written by teachers themselves. Article 5, Teaching Reading Virtually, was written by Jennifer Finley, who prominently points out that anything that can be done in person can be done in a virtual classroom. Article 6, Teaching Writing Virtually, by Jamie Sears, provides information to teachers on how to bring the classroom lessons to life for online students by using resources like Zoom and pre-recorded videos for students to watch. This way, the modeling that would be done in person can still be completed through virtual learning. Furthering my research, I found it to be extremely beneficial to be able to discuss teaching online with teachers who have been doing it for the last 6+ months. I formulated the following questions to ask during my interviews. These questions are each listed on the interview slides. How do you virtually teach students to read and write online as well as you could in person? Do you think students are able to maximize their learning online? Why or why not? Reading based, for students in kindergarten, how are you able to teach them sounds and letters to prepare them for reading virtually? And reading based, how do you virtually teach students how to write letters and words? How do you assess student knowledge in reading and writing virtually? It can be easy in person. It can be easier to find time to meet individually with struggling students. How do you manage struggling students online? Lastly, I gave them an opportunity to tell me if there was anything else that they felt was important enough that I should know. The first person I decided to interview was my cooperating teacher, Mr. Jeff Hamilton. He is a teacher from Cumberland Elementary School who teaches multi-age classes. The biggest takeaway from this interview was the importance of maximizing learning time for students. It includes preventing problems due to technology, behavior management, and preparation. The second interview I performed was with Mrs. Melissa Hayes, a second grade teacher at Fairfax County Elementary School. While she does not teach kindergarten, she repeatedly discusses the importance of small group instruction. Taking time to meet with students one-on-one or in small groups has helped her students excel the most while being virtual. The last person I interviewed was Mrs. Rachel Urbaniak, a kindergarten teacher in Loudoun County. The biggest takeaway from this interview was the importance of modeling the intended response for students and exposing them to a wide variety of text. There are so many online resources for showing students books that can and should be used while teaching online. Another piece of research I did while being in my practicum was an observation. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Mr. Hamilton teach virtually. For this, we used Zoom. Students' work was able to be assessed as they showed their writing to the camera after they answered each question. To summarize my findings, I found that throughout all the data I collected, the themes that were most consistent were the ideas that learning is best maximized when students are in person. Lessons that are planned to be in person can be altered to work online, and the importance of communication between parents, teachers, and students. What does this mean and how does it impact my future as a teacher? Well, it has more than simply prepared me for what to do in the event I have to teach virtually. In any given circumstances, I will continue to be an advocate for in-person classes due to the fact that as a teacher, I want to make the best decisions that most benefit my students in their education. As I further my research, I will be exploring more about how to keep students engaged while being online and how to get parents to be more involved in their students' education while being virtual. I'm also interested in having more experience from a teacher's side of virtual education. Art-based research is research that includes different modes of data that could include visuals, narratives, poems, identifying symbols and their meanings, and more. Art-based research allows for the reader to experience the story that is being told and puts them in the shoes of others who are experiencing problems or other situations. For my first art-based research, I wrote a few haiku poems. I was inspired to write these after working with students and teachers throughout my practicum and previous classroom experiences. The first one is titled Who I Am Today. My teachers taught me, prepared me for what's to come. We are the future. The next one is titled Students. Students learn each day, reading and writing to grow. Knowledge is power. And the last one is titled Teachers. Teachers are selfless. They are in it for the outcome, not for the income. These poems are about both teachers and students. They focus on the selflessness and influence that teachers have on students' lives and the potential students can have due to a good education. The next art-based research was a narrative I wrote about teaching virtually. We spend each day with young children. For years, we have spent countless hours preparing lessons and engaging activities, researching best practices, standards of learning, and differentiation strategies, staying after school to have conferences with parents and their struggling student. Half the year goes by and everything changes. We aren't returning back to school for 2 weeks. No, 2 more weeks. The rest of the year is online. We are now teaching our students who we once saw physically every single day through a computer screen, if they join. We revise our lessons to make them virtually accessible. We change our engaging activities to games on video chat, sending emails to the parents of our struggling students pleading that they join our calls, wishing we were in person to support our students and let them know we are here. We are teachers and we are doing our best. This was inspired by my research and the teachers who are working so hard to make sure their students are getting the best possible education they can while being online. This is a visual of a blended classroom. I have seen and been a part of this model throughout distance learning. On one side, we have the teacher who is teaching in their in-person class. And in this model, the teacher is also on a live video call with the students who have chosen or are scheduled to be synchronous. Obviously, the teacher is teaching the lesson to two groups of students. This means that the material prepared must be accessible to both groups of students. Another way I've seen this model done is by recording the lesson and uploading it for those who are synchronous so that they are able to view and follow along with the class. Finally, for a choice of art-based research, I chose to create a digital picture of the difference in in-person learning and distance learning. On the in-person side, you can see that the students are engaged, raising their hands and answering questions on the board with the teacher. On the distance learning side, you can see that the teacher and the students are on Zoom in their own bubble. The teacher is teaching and the students are all sitting in front of a screen listening to the teacher. This shows how in-person learning is way more engaging than distance learning. Overall, I have learned so much throughout my research to answer my question. How do you virtually teach students to read and write online as well as you could in person? Well, to answer that question, there's multiple parts. The first being, how do you virtually teach students to read and write? Well, from my research, teaching online is best done by adapting your original in-person lesson to an online format. Now to the as well as you could in person part of the original question. Well, you don't, but you do your best. Students learn best while being in person, but it is worth the effort to keep your students engaged and maximize the learning time online. As I continue my research, I would like to talk to more teachers who have taught during quarantine. I would like to know more about their initial transition into online teaching. I will also be keeping up to date on new articles and other resources that will provide information about distance learning. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and learn about my research question. I hope it inspires you to explore your own questions.